One day, a man named Will was on his way, with his girlfriend Kira, to attend a dinner invitation from his ex-wife Eden, at the house Will used to share with Eden. Eden was now remarried to David and living in that house. While on the way, something startled them. Will had hit a coyote. Seeing the animal in a critical condition, Will reluctantly put it out of its misery. When they arrived at Eden's house, located in the Los Angeles mountains, Will was reminded of a boy named Ty, who once played in the living room. They soon met the other dinner guests, who were also Will's friends, whom he hadn't seen in 2 years. Among them were Tommy and Miguel, along with Ben, Claire, Gina, and Gina's boyfriend Choi, who hadn't arrived yet. Shortly after, the hosts Eden and her husband David warmly welcomed Will and Kira, although Eden's behavior seemed a bit over the top. She even wiped the coyote's blood off Will's face. Eden, being from a wealthy family, had inherited the luxurious house in the Los Angeles mountains. The evening began with David giving a speech to the guests. At one point, Will noticed a half-naked woman smiling at him. Soon after, the woman introduced herself as Sadie, a friend of Eden's whom they had met in Mexico. Sadie now lived in the house with Eden and David. Kira recounted their encounter with the coyote and how they had to kill it to end its suffering. Will excused himself to grab a drink in the kitchen. There, he was flooded with memories of living in the house with Eden 2 years ago. He recalled a moment when Eden had attempted to take her own life with a kitchen knife, but Will managed to stop her. Suddenly, Eden appeared in the kitchen and shared stories of her travels to Mexico over the past 2 years. Will remarked that Eden seemed like a completely different person now. Eden responded that she felt free, and the pain she had once endured was gone. After that, Eden served wine to her guests, while Will noticed David making a phone call to someone. Shortly afterward, a guest arrived. They initially thought it was Choi, but it turned out to be David's friend Pruitt. Since Choi still hadn't shown up, Gina, worried, decided to step outside to call him, but the signal was poor. Meanwhile, Will found it strange when he saw David locking the front door. David explained that there had been a terrifying incident at a neighbor's house recently, so he wanted the door locked for safety, keeping the key himself. However, Will remained suspicious, particularly because it would make leaving the house difficult. To ease Will's concerns, David eventually placed the key back on the door handle. Eden then asked Will to bring some firewood, and while she spoke with Kira, she inquired if Will was often as restless as he seemed. Kira admitted that he occasionally was. A short while later, as Will went to fetch the firewood, he noticed Eden hiding something in her bedroom drawer. Curious, Will later sneaked into the room and checked the drawer. He discovered it was a bottle of tranquilizers and took 1 pill from it. As Will reflected on this, he remembered a moment from when he and Eden were still married, bathing together in a bathtub. Their son Ty walked into the bathroom. It became clear that Ty was their child. As the conversation continued, Eden, David, Sadie, and Pruitt revealed that they were part of a group with thousands of members. To explain further, David played a video to help the guests understand the group's purpose. The group's leader, Dr. Joseph, based in Mexico, emphasized their mission to help each other overcome sadness, suffering, pain, or trauma, which all humans experience. The video featured a woman named Annie, a terminal cancer patient who was nearing death. With a calm demeanor and soothing words, Dr. Joseph comforted her, assuring her that she would soon reunite with her deceased husband and father. Other group members surrounded Annie, watching as she passed away peacefully. Dr. Joseph concluded by saying that Annie was now free from suffering and living in peace. After watching the video, a debate erupted among the guests. Gina, Claire, Tommy, Kira, and Will felt that recording and showcasing someone's death was unethical and inappropriate. However, Miguel and Ben reacted more calmly, saying they found the video peaceful and reassuring. David explained that the video might be difficult for most people to process and understand, as it was meant to convey that humans should not fear suffering, including death, and should learn to accept it. David shared that Dr. Joseph had helped him, Eden, Sadie, and Pruitt free themselves from all worldly fears. When Eden began recounting her dark past with Will and how Dr. Joseph helped her overcome it, Will felt offended. Eden's remarks seemed to go too far, especially since Will had experienced the same pain. He was quickly calmed down and given a drink. Shortly after, Miguel approached Will, and Will shared that he had found a stash of tranquilizer pills in Eden's bedroom. Miguel, being a doctor, explained that the pills were phenobarbital, a sedative, but noted that such medication shouldn't be easily accessible. Once Will felt more composed, everyone resumed drinking. However, Miguel mentioned to David that Will suspected he and Eden were overusing the pills. David dismissed the concern, saying that what mattered most was living happily. When David stepped away, Will asked Miguel and Tommy if they didn't find the situation odd. Tommy responded that Will was being paranoid, emphasizing that the dinner was simply a long-awaited reunion of old friends. Tommy added that Will and Eden might seem strange, but in a big city like this, eccentric people were normal. David soon apologized to the group for showing them a video that might have disturbed them. He then proposed a game called I Want, a common activity for their group at the end of gatherings in Mexico. The game's purpose was to encourage honesty about one's true desires and to help overcome negative emotions, social awkwardness, or shame that might hinder achieving those desires. Intrigued, the group agreed to try it. Sadie started the game by saying she felt love and affection that evening, despite not knowing everyone well. She suddenly kissed Gina, saying it was what she truly wanted. Fortunately, Gina took it as light-hearted fun. When it was Gina's turn, she asked for drugs, which David promptly provided, revealing he happened to have some. After that, Pruitt shared a story about his wife. They had been married for 8 years, and he spoke about how they met and how deeply he loved her, describing her as perfect. However, one day, Pruitt came home drunk and got into a heated argument with his wife. The fight escalated beyond control, and in a moment of anger, Pruitt struck her with full force. Her head hit something hard, and shortly after, she died. It was the greatest mistake and regret of Pruitt's life, something he felt he could never forgive himself for. Pruitt served 5 years in prison for his actions. After his release, he joined Dr. Joseph's group, which helped him find acceptance and let go of the past, enabling him to look toward the future. As David, Pruitt, and Sadie continued talking, their words seemed increasingly persuasive and unsettling to the others. Some of the guests felt manipulated. David denied having any ulterior motives, insisting he meant no harm. The game resumed, and Eden revealed that her desire was to kiss Ben. David reacted indifferently, as if it didn't matter. Claire, increasingly uncomfortable with the situation, decided to leave. David tried to convince her to stay, saying it was just a game, but she insisted on leaving. Will also urged David not to stop her. Since Pruitt's car was parked behind Claire's, he offered to move his car and escort her out. Suspicious, Will watched from the window as Claire left. From his vantage point, he saw Pruitt stop Claire's car, but Will couldn't see what happened next due to the angle. Just then, David approached Will for a private conversation. David expressed his happiness that Will had accepted the invitation to attend, saying Will was specially chosen to be there. He questioned why Will kept doubting his hospitality. Will apologized, admitting he might have made a mistake in coming to the reunion. Shortly after, Pruitt returned to the house, explaining that he had stopped Claire to apologize directly to her for making everyone uncomfortable with his dark story earlier. After that, they continued their dinner while chatting, but Will remained visibly suspicious. He was reminded of a traumatic event from his past with Eden, the birthday party of their son, Ty. During the party, Ty was playing with other children, hitting a baseball with a stick. Tragically, an unforeseen accident occurred when Ty was struck hard by the bat. He was rushed to the hospital, but his life couldn't be saved. The death of their son was the event that led to Eden's suicide attempt 2 years earlier and eventually their divorce. Needing to calm himself, Will stepped outside for a moment. When he returned, he saw Sadie behaving very strangely in her room. Shortly after, Sadie approached him, asking about his relationship with Kira. Suddenly, she propositioned him, suggesting they sleep together immediately. Sadie claimed it was a natural way to satisfy biological needs and mentioned that her group in Mexico often engaged in free sexual relationships. Will, growing increasingly suspicious of the entire situation, confided in Tommy that something felt very wrong. However, Tommy once again dismissed Will's concerns, saying he was being paranoid. After Tommy left, Will finally got a bit of cell signal and received a voicemail from Choi, Gina's boyfriend. In the message, Choi explained that he had planned to arrive at Eden's house earlier than everyone else. However, he had forgotten to pick up a cake order at a bakery and asked Will to grab it for him since he was already in the mountains. This voicemail heightened Will's suspicions. Choi should have been at the house since 7 p.m., but there was still no sign of him. As everyone gathered again, the lights suddenly went out. It turned out to be a surprise as Eden and David brought out a birthday cake for Miguel, even though his birthday was still a week away. While everyone celebrated, Will abruptly asked where Choi was. He told the group about the voicemail Choi had left, saying he had arrived at the house around 7 p.m. Will demanded Eden explain Choi's whereabouts, but Eden insisted she hadn't seen him. Will, becoming increasingly agitated, openly declared that something was seriously wrong. He pointed out how suspicious it was to invite two strangers, Sadie and Pruitt, to a reunion of old friends. He also criticized the extravagant dinner after 2 years of no contact and the overly polite, constant smiles of Eden, David, Sadie and Pruitt, saying they didn't act like normal people. With his emotions boiling over, Will accused them of organizing the dinner not as a reunion, but as an attempt to brainwash the group into joining a cult. He also confronted Eden directly, saying it was wrong for her to move on so easily from their son's death. Will insisted that the death of a child shouldn't be ignored or forgotten. It was a tragic event that needed to be remembered. Will began questioning why the doors were locked, why the windows were barred, why there was a bottle of sedatives in Eden's drawer, and most importantly, where Choi was. As his frustration grew, Kira tried to calm him down and insisted they leave immediately. However, in the midst of the tense confrontation, the doorbell rang. It was Choi. Choi explained that he had indeed arrived at 7 p.m. as planned, but had to leave briefly for an urgent work matter. Seeing everyone staring at him with annoyance, Will apologized to Eden and David, who fortunately didn't hold it against him. Will retreated to the bathroom to collect himself and was overwhelmed by memories of washing his son Ty's hands. Lost in thought and gazing at the city lights, Kira approached him. Will admitted that he thought about Ty every day and still felt guilty for not being able to save him. Kira comforted him, reminding him that the tragic incident was beyond his control and urging him to focus on moving forward with his life. Later, during the cake cutting, Will asked Eden for permission to visit Ty's old room. Overcome with sorrow, he was flooded with bittersweet memories of his time with his son. As Will sat in the room lost in thought, he noticed David stepping outside and lighting a red lantern. Feeling uneasy again, Will decided to search a nearby table and discovered David's laptop. On it, he found a series of videos from Dr. Joseph, conveying ominous messages to his followers. The videos featured lines like, "I know you may have doubts, but this is the truth. A beautiful reward awaits you if you take this step tonight. Starting is the hardest part, but continue forward with trust and surrender yourself. I love you, and I am waiting for you." Shortly after, Pruitt knocked on the door, saying the others were waiting for Will to return. Eden and David were preparing glasses of wine for everyone. David remarked to Eden that the group seemed genuinely happy, and he proposed a toast. They raised their glasses for a better world and peace. Gina, impatient, took a sip of her wine. As everyone prepared to toast, Will suddenly smashed all the glasses. He accused them of poisoning the drinks. Panic erupted as Will urged Kira to leave immediately. Sadie, furious at Will for ruining the plan, attacked him. In self-defense, Will pushed Sadie, causing her head to hit a table. Checking on her, they realized she was still breathing. However, the situation took a horrific turn when they noticed Gina was no longer breathing, with foam bubbling from her mouth. As a doctor, Miguel immediately began administering CPR and first aid to Gina, compressing her chest and attempting to resuscitate her. No one knew what was happening until, suddenly, David shot Miguel. Everyone was stunned, and then Pruitt grabbed the gun from David and shot Choi. Will immediately grabbed Kira, urging her to escape, but all the doors were locked, the windows were barred, and there was no cell signal. A frenzied Sadie attacked Will again, but they managed to fend her off and hide in a room. From their hiding spot, they witnessed David and Pruitt coldly killing Ben. Will told Kira to stay calm, reminding her that their attackers were just human beings. They carefully exited the room and overheard Eden and David talking. Eden expressed regret, saying they should have died peacefully in their sleep, not in such a brutal manner. David reassured her, insisting they had to finish the plan as decreed by Dr. Joseph, even if it required more drastic measures due to Will's interference. Eden began to doubt their actions, but David continued to convince her, saying they had been chosen to rid humanity of suffering. Will and Kira planned to escape through the garage on the upper floor. On their way, they encountered Sadie, who was mortally wounded after stabbing herself with a metal rod. Will took the rod as a weapon. When they reached the second floor, they found blood splattered everywhere. To their horror, the garage door was no longer there due to renovations. Pruitt soon appeared with a gun, forcing them to hide among the furniture. Will launched a surprise attack, and a struggle ensued. Cornered, Will was saved by Kira, who used the rod to repeatedly strike Pruitt until he was dead. They then encountered Eden, who shot Will in the arm. However, Eden, overwhelmed by guilt, turned the gun on herself and shot herself in the stomach. David, armed with a knife, roamed the house. Tommy hid in the kitchen, while Kira tried to grab Eden's gun, only to discover it was out of bullets. Will bluffed, pretending the gun was loaded, and warned David to stay back. David remained calm, saying Eden was now in paradise, and he wasn't afraid to die. As David ascended the stairs, Tommy suddenly ambushed him, and a struggle ended with Tommy killing David. The terrifying ordeal was finally over, leaving only Will, Kira, and Tommy alive. Eden, in her final moments, tearfully confessed that she missed their son deeply and regretted her actions. She asked Will to carry her outside so she could rest in peace. Shortly after Eden died, the three survivors embraced, finding a brief moment of solace. However, as Tommy went inside to retrieve Miguel's body, Will noticed something shocking outside. The cityscape was dotted with countless glowing red lanterns, like the one David had lit earlier. The air was filled with the sounds of people screaming, dogs barking, sirens wailing, and helicopters flying overhead. It became chillingly clear that thousands of Dr. Joseph's cult members had been ordered to carry out similar horrific acts that night. And that's it for the story series of this film. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to support this channel by subscribe, like, and share. See you in the next video. Goodbye.